There's a monolith. They're a very unusual structure on this little potato-shaped object that goes around Mars once in 7 hours from Buzz Aldrin's wild confession to pyramids on Mars. NASA has a lot to hide and a lot to explain. For over the years, the agency has developed a knack for archiving the eerie visuals from space that ought to freak people out. Those images can spin your perspective on space exploration to 180 degrees, something the agency desperately wants to avoid, and then there's no going back. So sit tight and join us as we unravel everything about NASA Leaking 10. NASA Leaking 10. Terrifying space images we weren't supposed to see. Terrifying space images we weren't supposed to see. Let's get started. Number 10, Apollo 11, Mission One Small Step for Apollo 11 Man, One Giant Leap for Mankind. The Apollo 11 mission was a monumental event in the Earth's recent history. In the ever-rigorous race for outer space, the United States had sent a successful mission to the moon. While defying all odds, a 3-day journey into lunar orbit was about to change every space exploration venture. For the first time ever, the scientific world looked hopeful and enthusiastic to uncover life-changing secrets from our universe overall. Apollo 11 was successful in all regards. It had collected the promised sample and brought back clear-cut pictures of the moon's surface. Since then, moon landings have been a favorite pastime subject for conspiracies and speculation, and we're just not talking about the big debate if the moon landing was real or not. If anything, that's perhaps not the right question to ask when NASA and the state's UFO agency have done anything in their power to hide and censor the real experiences of the Apollo 11 astronauts. And the most controversial figure is, of course, Buzz Aldrin, as he has dragged the UFO for lying to the public. You see, when Aldrin entered the lunar orbit, he observed a light out of the window that was moving along their spacecraft. While the astronaut has a lot of theories, he didn't rule out the possibility of some outer world rocket or spacecraft following their trajectory. The unexplained flashes of light had left the Apollo 11 moonwalkers pretty confused. One theory suggests that they might have seen high-energy cosmic particles that were flashing lights as the spacecraft moved along. Yet neither of the astronauts has vouched for this theory or confirmed anything similar as far as Aldrin is concerned. His sightings are unidentified and unexplained. Buzz Aldrin had also reported the weird streaks of light to NASA right after his mission, after all the agency was theorizing about extraterrestrial existence for years. Even the astronaut himself is convinced that there is an astrobiological presence in space that could be hundreds of light years away. However, he was shocked when he came to know that America's UFO agency hadn't revealed his findings to the public. So when he openly admitted to witnessing the weird flashes of lights, the higher-ups went ballistic on him, but the ship had sailed later on. NASA was quite forthcoming with the information. So far, the mystery of weird flashes of light remains unsolved. Number 9, Mars. Henge. Henge. The mystery of Stonehenge is a never-ending saga, even though scientists have many robust theories about unusual structures. Mythical speculations haven't died down. Some believe the site is the ruins of a Roman temple or a giant calendar based on the solar year. And of course, the most popular myth about Stonehenge is that it was built by Merlin, the powerful Arthurian wizard. But for years, many alien conspiracy theorists have believed otherwise. According to many, Stonehenge is purely an alien creation, or it has something to do with a cosmic presence that laid out the stones in a way that they were facing the sunrise of the summer solstice and the sunset of the winter solstice. As much as the improbable theories around the structure call for some unconventional hypothesis, scientists haven't credited the alien theory enough in their defense. The rationale behind Stonehenge is an amalgamation of Eastern Mediterranean and Egypt-inspired calendars, until NASA's mission on Mars captured images that left many scientists shocked and speechless. The rover on the Martian surface sent back some interesting images, and in one of the high-resolution images, we can see a circular structure of stones arranged in a peculiar yet certain pattern. Just like Stonehenge, dubbed as the Mars Henge, the stone structure has 2 circles of rocks and 1 square in its center. The resemblance to the original Stonehenge is almost uncanny, but of course we can't definitely say which of those 2 structures is the original, while the other one is a close imitation. After all, it is hard to gauge any Egyptian influence on a structure found on the red planet. What's really interesting about this case is that the pictures from the Martian rover are decades old, believe it or not. NASA had that groundbreaking pictorial proof archive since the 1970s. But when the space agency started to make more and more of its discoveries, some eagle-eye UFO investigators made this remarkable discovery. And in the process, they have fueled the popular narrative that has plagued NASA for years. Many believe the agency has concrete proof of alien sightings, but keeps the public in the dark for the most part. Many NASA-affiliated scientists have dismissed the Mars-Henge theory, you heard that right. Despite having clear-cut images of a Martian Stonehenge structure, they don't want to engage in the obvious. Instead, they believe ET hunters are just experiencing pareidolia, a condition where our brain tricks us into noticing familiar patterns in ambiguous visual patterns. Sure, but what are the chances of nature conjuring up a stone structure on Mars that's a spitting image of something equally bizarre on Earth? Add this haunting question to your list of the top 10 things science can't answer so far. At least number 8, Chelyabinsk meteor, Chelyabinsk meteor. It's not a mystery that NASA doesn't have definite proof regarding big meteor impacts on Earth. Our planet is centuries old, and it's hard to document its history from the time when technology was non-existent. So the agency can't conclusively tell us if we have had mind-bending contacts with meteoroids. Typically, a huge fireball event would leave craters that are deeper, like the oceans, and many humans would probably lose their lives. The devastation would be matchless. NASA can't definitely say if the Earth has had similar levels of destruction. After all, many deep craters must have eroded by now, or they might be hiding under the oceans. But that doesn't mean we haven't come close to experiencing mass levels of devastation. In 2013, a building-sized meteor entered the atmosphere near Chelyabinsk in Russia. Its speed was 11 miles per hour, and it exploded just 14 miles above the ground. The blast was heard and felt everywhere in the country. The sonic boom shattered glass in every vicinity of the meteor, and the light that flashed was almost blinding. Many thought that doomsday was here. The impact happened in a split second. More than 1,500 people were injured due to shattered glass that was lodged into their bodies. Not to mention more than 7,200 buildings experienced significant damage because of the shock wave that followed. Yep, there was no moment of hesitation. 1 minute, everything was fine, and in the next minute, there was a deep crater in the Chelyabinsk vicinity. Images leaked by NASA are nothing short of terrifying. Usually, such instances of planetary defense are kept hush-hush until robust investigations are made, but the severity of the situation was too important for anyone to keep the meteor attack a secret. Plus, the event had a monumental shock after, for years, NASA had illusioned us into believing that we have a strong enough infrastructure to take care of such foreign intrusion. Apparently not, though. Number 7, Martian pyramids. Martian pyramids. What if we tell you there's a huge possibility that Mars has its own version of pyramids? All right, we are aware this is not an episode of Doctor Who, but that little piece of fiction has turned into a reality. NASA's Curiosity rover has done some life-changing work on the Martian surface since the mission sends back constant updates from the red planet. We've started to know Mars much more closely. So far, we can safely say that the planet's surface awfully resembles Earth. There's water dust, Stonehenge, and now the Egyptian classic pyramids. There is little doubt that the captured image isn't a pyramid, or at least a pyramid-like structure, even though NASA didn't roll the image as an astonishing discovery. The image made waves on many conspiracy theory websites for many ET enthusiasts. Curiosity's discovery is nothing short of a lottery. Finally, many ET hunters have substantial proof that aliens had something to do with making the Egyptian wonders of the world. Sure, scientists have an alternative theory that the Martian structures are just a coincidental reflection of the pyramids, due to the wind erosion is quite strong on the planet, which magically took a pyramidal shape. That's plausible, of course, but a close investigation of the Martian structure will tell you that it has the scientific specifications and precision of the Egyptian wonders in the constant back and forth. The scientists were also able to point out that the pyramids on Mars aren't as big as the ones on our planet at most outer space. Pyramids are of a car's size, but conspiracy theorists are relentless. Many close observations show that the pyramids aren't just ordinary rock formations, and certainly it is not some grand light and shadow trick either. What we see in the captured image is something very real, a product of intelligent design and careful mastery. Now, since space missions in NASA haven't pulled up those pyramids then, who has all fingers point towards an astrobiological presence that's smart and calculated enough to string scientific wonders like pyramids also, since many people believe that the pyramids in Egypt are just the tip of the underground structures. The same could be said about Mars's structures too. But so far we only have an image that isn't enough to prove or disprove any. Theory number 6, Bruce McCandless's spacewalk. By all means, space exploration is a very dangerous venture, particularly if you're about to fly to outer space. Any astronaut would want to take every single precaution in the NASA handbook. Not Bruce McCandless, Segun, though as the STS-41B specialist, Bruce became the first NASA astronaut to float in outer space without any constraints and support from his space shuttle. Sounds dangerous, right? Well, that doesn't mean that the entire mission wasn't safe. The only alarming thing about the entire experience was that NASA was experimenting with the spacewalk for the first time. It was the first use of the Manned Maneuvering Unit, or the MMU, which was entirely a hand-controlled device propelling. Using nitrogen, previously astronauts would use restrictive tethers for spacewalking. Using tethers or restraints not only restricted their mobility in outer space, but limited the scope of the exploration as well with the use of MMU. Astronauts could reach any crook and corner of their mission, but of course the MMU had to be tested, and Bruce McCandless was the one who took on the daring journey as the mission specialist. The astronaut stepped out from his shuttle and used his hands to hover above the Earth. Believe it or not, his hands and a few buttons were the only things controlling his entire movement. His space shuttle, called the Challenger, was a few meters away, but since no tethers were involved, any chances of malfunction would have ended up in an entirely different scenario. Thankfully, we got a hero in Bruce McCandless, the Noan. That doesn't mean Bruce wasn't apprehensive, though. He was always lurking around Challenger, just in case of an emergency. But even more so, his very worried wife was watching him live from the space station. What was really frightening about the spacewalk was the fact that the MMU was still being tested and tweaked before it was deployed. In fact, Bruce was one of the engineers who was working on it. It was a huge risk, but it had to be done. Not to mention the spacewalk had to last long enough to test the MMU through all protocols. So for more than 6 hours, the astronaut was hovering right outside the Earth. The speed of the device was 1,800 miles per hour, and the angle of the device was such that the sun was shining directly at Bruce. Incredible photo, and an even more incredible feat. Number 5. Mysterious music. NASA was mysterious music. Very forthcoming with the pictures of Apollo 10. The entire mission represented everything that the space agency was capable of, including sending a man to the moon, and it did so through Apollo 11. By all means, the moon landing venture is plagued with many theories and uncertainties, but so is its predecessor, Apollo 10. Mostly the only pictures we see of the mission are pretty typical. We see astronauts Thomas Stafford, John Young, and Eugene Cernan talking to each other as they orbit the moon. But even in those pictures and video recordings, there's a moment of hesitation, as if the team of astronauts saw something that they weren't supposed to see. Even though it took some digging, NASA made some of the discoveries from the Apollo 10 mission public in 2008, but we didn't get to know the full extent of the extraordinary event. The agency was very ambiguous with the details. All we knew was that the team of astronauts had heard some strange noises. Turns out the perplexed faces of the astronauts benchmarked a huge discovery, and NASA only leaked the accurate transcripts and footages in 2016, 47 years after the original 1969 mission. In the audio, we can hear bizarre music being blasted in the lunar orbit. Boy, that sure is weird music. Now that's a whistling, like an outer space type thing. The music is eerie, bone-chilling, and definitely reeks of outer space involvement. At first you can call the music some sort of radio disturbance, but it would be quite an amateur mistake to make you see. Apollo 10 was on the far side of the moon when they heard the strange noises in that region. The space flight was out of radio contact with Earth too. So whatever the source of that noise was, it wasn't coming from Earth that spooked the Apollo. 10 astronauts real quick. They couldn't place the origin and the source of the creepy music. But of course, they were asked to keep their experience on the DL by NASA. In the audio, Eugene Cernan is heard asking his peers if they can also hear the whistling sound. They were so terrified that they debated telling the NASA chiefs that they aren't alone in the vastness of the universe. There was someone who was lurking around and perhaps had a knack for music. Yet back in their time to talk about the authenticity of aliens was a career suicide. They couldn't afford to compromise their next space mission. So it was more of a hush-hush situation. Later on, the trio dubbed those unexplained noises as outer space music. Number 4, Doorway into Mars. Doorway into Mars. Mars is full of secrets, and NASA's rover for the Martian surface is hellbound to unravel them all. But there's one party that's more ambitious about the discoveries than the space agency itself. We are, of course, talking about the ET hunters and Mars conspiracy theorists. Every now and then, eagle-eyed viewers of the rover's live stream find something extraordinary, and their captured images or screenshots become the source of speculation and hypothesizing on the internet. We've already mentioned the mysterious and enigmatic pyramids and Stonehenge that probably exist on Mars. The fact that NASA takes such coincidences so lightly is concerning. Most of the discoveries are brushed off as coincidences or fragments of our wild imagination. Beyond that, the agency doesn't elaborate much and refuses to probe further into creepy instances. This is exactly why we know next to nothing about the mysterious doorway that was found in one of the rocky formations on the Red Planet. You heard that right, a doorway. NASA's rover Curiosity was probing into the east cliffs of the planet when people stumbled upon a door-shaped fracture in the Mount Sharp. And let's just say conspiracy theorists had a field day, thanks to NASA's tendency to leak clear-cut high-resolution pictures from the Martian mission. We could look into the fracture more closely and, oh boy, it doesn't look like a natural feature at all. It definitely looks like someone carved a door into Mount Sharp to build a sanctuary or a temple of secrets on a closer look. You'd see the doorway wasn't made for average-sized humans, since it is only 12 inches tall and 16 inches wide. It would be difficult for a mundane person to pass through the door. At best, it looks like a dog door, but then again, a lot of speculative literature around aliens show them as short-headed. So could it be that our alien friends made a door into Mount Sharp, NASA? Scientists don't think so. According to them, such fractures in Mars bedrock are super common, and we shouldn't let our imagination run wild. But ET hunters know what they saw, and it's just not a common hole in the rugged mount. Number 3, CW Leonis stars are CW Leonis beautiful and romantic. Well, sometimes at least the Hubble Space Telescope has taken images of the CW Leonis, a star that is on the verge of dying for 2 decades. The star is devolving into complete debris, and the dimness of any light it radiates, and finally we have clear-cut images of how creepy stars could look when they are fighting against the dying of their light. What's really interesting about this star is how quickly it is dying. Typically, massive stars like Leonis don't go out easily. Just within 15 years, there has been a dramatic shift in its brightness, which is definitely an unusual trajectory for NASA. But what makes this star so scary? Well, when stars die, they're essentially running out of fuel to burn. Gradually, they turn into colossal monsters called the red giants. Now, these giants are some big gulpers. Yep, they start to swallow nearby planets and other outer space bodies due to their large size and gravity. And ever since NASA has linked the up-close image of the star, can't say we aren't a little jumpy in particular. CW Leonis looks creepy because it has woven a cobweb of dust clouds around itself. It seems like the web is deadly for other bodies in outer space, as if CW Leonis wants to lure everything in its way to kill it in a blog post. NASA said the star looks like it's entrapped inside wispy orange spiderwebs that wrap around the starbeams of light shine through the dust like sunbeams on a partly cloudy day. Not to mention the cobwebs are orange-red clouds of carbon that the star has been leaking into space. So yeah, up there, the basic unit of life is in abundance and isn't going anywhere. Sure, the accumulation of carbon isn't a definite proof of astrobiological life, but it certainly helps with the theories. What actually helps in theorizing is the chemical composition and location of the star. Since it is a carbon star, meaning it is mostly made up of carbon. It has unique features for NASA to study, and it is convenient that CW Leonis is the closest carbon star from the Earth. Even then, it is 400 light years away. But hey, you get the idea. But also, many scientists have dubbed CW Leonis as the trash star. Just like the interstellar trash, the star has propelled a lot of dust and debris in its vicinity. To get to the star one would have to travel through the clouds of smoke and dust, an unpleasant journey. Indeed, number two, meteoroid impact on Mars. Mars for years, NASA has been selling us. The Mars is potentially habitable story, and many of us actually believe that if the world was to end, we can possibly find other alternative means to live on the red planet. But most of us remain skeptical due to movies like Don't Look Up or NASA's leaked images of a meteoroid's impact on Mars, and the resulting crater is as deep as an ocean as per the space agency. Smaller meteor impacts are common in the Earth's atmosphere. Once in more than 100 years, there is one considerable impact, but not enough to wipe the Earth clean. Plus, the technology has given us the means to detect any intruders before they hit the planet's surface. But can we say the same about Mars as well? Perhaps not in 2022. NASA's seismogram on the red planet showed a massive earthquake. Rippling across the planet's surface, scientists were ready to observe and study the seismographic data when they realized that the quake wasn't an ordinary movement in the planet's crust. It had been attacked by a massive meteor. The resulting crater is the largest and the deepest one observed by NASA both in outer and inner space. Yep, the size of the crater is something that has never been seen in the observed part of the universe, and that has put some red flags on the future of NASA's missions on the planet. What's really bothersome is that the meteor impact has cut open the planet's surface, and NASA can see big ice boulders that were buried in the planet's equator. All things considered, this isn't good news, and the leaked images are terrifying. Number one, the mechanic. Honestly, the Curiosity rover has helped NASA with monumental discoveries on Mars, but on the downside, it has fueled more and more uncertainty and doubt about the space agency's integrity. After all, the live stream is an open invite for the NASA doubters and conspiracy theorists to speculate. And when they churn up something unexplainable or creepy, NASA gives no substantial explanation other than, hey, y'all are seeing things. Yep, that's one way to steer the conspiracies, or perhaps invite some more. But this time people saw something very close to the Curiosity rover. So close that for many ET hunters, there's little room for doubt in a picture. Making waves on the internet, we can see a human-like figure working on the Curiosity rover, just like a NASA engineer would do to fix a bug or change some settings on the robot, since the mysterious man is almost adjacent to the rover's camera. We can't see the exact image, but a shadow is very much there. Even from a single glance, we can see that the enigmatic figure is carrying an oxygen tank, and tinkering with the robot was the person trying to steal something, or did its curiosity get the best of it? Pun intended, of course. It's hard to streamline many explanations behind the bizarre image, but the common consensus says that it's just not some coincidental shadow of a human-like figure. It is definitely something real. Either it could be a stranded man on the surface of Mars or an astrological being, favoring the latter, of course. Needless to say, many ET hunters were ecstatic to stumble on something that looked like a humanoid. Unless there's an alien base on Mars, it is difficult to accept a single image as conclusive proof of yet's existence. Not to mention, an alternative theory suggests that it's just an unusual shadow of some part of the rover that happens to look like a human being, the same way you'd spot a human image within the cloud's formation. It isn't surprising that NASA scientists are also vouching for the weird shadow theory. According to them, Curiosity wouldn't have missed other signs of aliens if they existed, of course. But then again, it is hard to unsee the mysterious image. It definitely looks like a mechanic doing his honest day of work on the million-dollar rover. Plus, the sighting also seems to galvanize the popular theory that the U.S. has deployed a team of officers on Mars to gain an edge over its specialized outer space forces in an effort to win the space race. Those American soldiers live and thrive on Mars. Could it be one of the loyal soldiers fixing the rover? It's possible. Enjoy this deep dive into NASA's secrets like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more.